Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm George Thomas. Today, the United States and Iran engaging in diplomatic talks over that country's nuclear program, as President Trump says Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. And many in Israel worry that Iran is trying to stall for time. Plus, we'll look at how Israel is making major gains against Hamas. Here at home, a man said to be charged with arson, attempted murder, and more after allegedly setting fire to the Pennsylvania governor's mansion. Authorities investigating if the governor's Jewish faith was a factor because the family and guests had celebrated Passover. The political battle in Maine over transgender athletes. We'll see how some are standing up for the rights of female athletes so they don't have to compete against biological men. And another example of how God is at work as more college students come to Christ at a gospel event in Texas. Those stories and much more today on Newswatch.
This is CBN Newswatch.
We begin with the diplomatic attempts to head off a military strike on Iran's nuclear program. Teams from the U.S. and Iran set to meet for the first time in direct negotiations. They met actually on Saturday, with more talks set this weekend, reportedly in Rome. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, the outcome of these talks may shift the future of the Middle East.
Little was publicized in Oman from the first negotiations between the Iranians and the Trump administration on Iran's potential nuclear weapons. But more talks will be held Saturday, and both sides tried to sound upbeat.
Nothing matters until you get it done, so I don't like talking about it, but it's going okay. The Iran situation's going pretty good.
As the first session, it was a constructive meeting. It took place in a calm and very respectful environment.
The greatest fear for many Israelis is the Iranian regime will drag these talks out as it actually finishes developing nuclear weapons and then has the ability to destroy Israel. And some worry it appears the Iranian negotiators are already trying to stall.
The American side said their aim is to reach an agreement in the shortest possible time. But of course, this won't be easy. It's still too early to talk about that.
Trump may not be willing to put up with any stalling. He told reporters on Sunday,
"We'll be making a decision on Iran very quickly."
In Gaza, Israeli forces continue ever more fierce attacks on Hamas. They're capturing more land, in one case totally cutting off Hamas stronghold Rafah from the rest of Gaza. Israel's defense minister warned Gazans over the weekend the only way to stop the destruction is for them to end it themselves. Israel Katz stated, "It is time to stand up and remove Hamas and release all the Israeli hostages. This is the only way to end the war." The Jewish state has declared until Hamas frees all the hostages, Israel will continue to take more and more of Gaza and turn the captured land into vast buffer zones.
Many areas are being seized and added to the security zones of the State of Israel, leaving Gaza smaller and isolated.
This hurts Hamas because one of the greatest catastrophes for Islamists is to lose land to non-Muslims. Some Gazans gathered in church to mark Palm Sunday, despite their suffering as the war grinds on.
The situation has gotten out of hand. Our situation is unbearable. The situation is tragic.
Thousands also marked Palm Sunday in Jerusalem, marching with palm fronds along the path they believe Jesus rode on in his final entry into Jerusalem before his crucifixion and resurrection.
It's really nice to have such a joyful day because sometimes it can be a bit heavy to live here with everything that's going on.
I hope everyone around the world could join us here in Jerusalem for the procession. I wish that the war will stop soon and everything will come back to normal.
Chris joins me now from Jerusalem. Chris, you mentioned in your report there's growing concern Iran will try to drag out the talks. It's so interesting because there's word that I caught from President Trump's comment there on Air Force One is that he wants a resolution quickly. Is that the sense from Israel there?
Exactly, George. I think there's a sense that I would believe some people over here think, why the talks at all? They've been talking for, about 20 years about Iran's nuclear facilities, and yet they keep building them. They keep advancing enriched uranium on their way to a nuclear bomb. So there's a big hope here, particularly at Passover here, George. If you go to the Passover Seder, there's a saying, in every generation, someone rises up to kill us, but the Holy One, blessed be he delivers us. So Israelis certainly see the Islamic Republic as one of those in this generation designed to kill the Jewish people and destroy the modern state of Israel. So they do see the Trump administration as allies to hopefully beat back the Islamic Republic. But the main concern, I would think, is that these talks are delaying things. Right now, we're here in Amman, as you said, reportedly next Saturday in Rome. But all the while Iran can continue to pursue its nuclear weapons. The Iranians, their masses at negotiations. So Israelis wonder how long are these negotiations are going to continue, what's the goal, and what happens if they fail. Optimism with the statement there by President Trump on Air Force One that there is a limit to what he's going to wait on these talks.
I'm curious, we have been talking here on CBN News a very long time about the possibility of Israel going after Iran's nuclear program. With Hezbollah pretty much, dismantled, Hamas on its back foot, the Houthis, Syria is out of the equation. Is it your opinion that this looks like the best time for that to happen today?
I think it's the best time ever for Israel. As you said, this whole ring of fire, you basically talked about Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, they are sort of the guarantor that if Israel ever attacked Iran's nuclear facilities, then Iran was going to unleash all these proxy armies surrounding Israel. But now that Hezbollah is a shadow of what it was, same thing with Hamas, and now the Houthis are getting beat quite badly by a U.S. air campaign. This has to be the best time, as well as last year, George. That the air defenses of Iran weren't quite decimated, but damaged significantly by Israel's strike. Also, the air defenses inside Syria. So militarily, it looks like just the best time that Israel and possibly the U.S. can strike Iran's nuclear facilities.
Yeah, those air defenses, both in Damascus as well as in Tehran, they were, delivered by the Russians. So the fact that the Israelis were able to penetrate those air defenses is quite significant. Let's talk about Israel's ongoing war with Hamas. How important is it for Israel to cut off Hamas's stronghold in Rafah from the rest of Gaza?
Well, it's very important, George, and it's part of their new policy where they're just taking land and holding it. Right now, it's estimated they control about 30% of the Gaza Strip and on their way to maybe 50%. So they're setting up these security zones. As you say, they're cutting off Rafah from the rest of Gaza. They're also having a corridor. They call it the Morag Corridor, and that's cutting off, from east to west, or north to south, the Gaza Strip. So it's very, very important what they're doing and really squeezing Hamas like it hasn't been in about a year and a half, all in an attempt to not only destroy Hamas militarily, but also free the hostages.
Chris, we've heard reports in the last few weeks about the influence of Hamas on major media. What have you learned?
Well, I was going to ask you, George, what have you learned? You were the one who was reporting inside Gaza, I believe, 2019. You saw it firsthand. What's coming out of Gaza is already filtered through the Hamas Ministry of Information, Ministry of Health. Nothing really gets out of Gaza unless without the Hamas permission. So much of the reporting we get in some Western media, like the BBC, for example, that it really gets filtered through journalists who are affiliated with Hamas and this really skews what sometimes gets out of Gaza. But I was referring to you. You were there, and you were able to actually, you saw firsthand how Hamas tries to restrict news getting out of Gaza.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you say anything negative against the military operations, if you say anything against Hamas, you are in big trouble. You will get a knock from the intelligence services. They're not a good situation. Chris, let's end on a hopeful note here. Obviously, the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus for Christians there in the Holy Land, very, very important. We saw pictures of folks celebrating Palm Sunday.
Heart of the Christian faith, celebrating Palm Sunday 1 week before Jesus was crucified, buried, and then rose again. The heart of our faith, George. We saw that firsthand on the Mount of Olives. And also, just to let you know, you can watch that on YouTube. I was there on YouTube. We're going to have devotions every day in a different location here in Jerusalem, tracing the steps of Jesus from Palm Sunday all the way to Easter morning. You can see that on YouTube and Facebook.
Fantastic, Chris, as always. Thank you so much. Appreciate your insights. Stay safe. And many people all around the world are praying for you and your staff there in Israel. Coming up here at home, a man is facing charges after authorities say he broke into the Pennsylvania governor's mansion in the middle of the night and set it on fire, forcing Governor Josh Shapiro, his family and guests to evacuate during the Jewish holiday of Passover. We'll bring you that story right after this. Police have arrested a man for setting fire to the Pennsylvania governor's mansion. They say the suspect clearly intended to burn it to the ground. Authorities are investigating how someone was able to avoid police to break into the governor's residence. Dale Hurd has a story.
Flames broke out at the governor's mansion in Harrisburg around 2 a.m. Sunday, while Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, a 2024 vice presidential contender, and his family were asleep inside.
The governor's residence reporting a large fire in the dining room on the first floor. They can see fire out the windows.
State troopers assigned to our detail banged on our door, woke us up and told us we had an emergency and needed to leave immediately. Together, we secured all of our children, our 2 dogs, our family that was staying with us.
All escaped safely. Police have arrested and will charge 38-year-old Harrisburg resident Cody Balmer. Court records show Balmer has a lengthy criminal history with charges of assault, theft, and forgery.
The charges will include attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault against an enumerated person.
He clearly had a plan. He was very methodical in his approach and moved through it without a lot of hurry.
Authorities are now investigating whether the attack on the first night of Passover was motivated by Shapiro's Jewish faith. The Passover holiday, which began at sundown Saturday, commemorates the Israelites' liberation from slavery in ancient Egypt. Just hours before the fire, Shapiro shared this photo of his family's Seder table on social media, apparently the same room that was later set on fire.
Lori and I are overwhelmed by the prayers.
Shapiro condemned political violence and said the arson would not stop his family from celebrating Passover.
We celebrated our faith last night proudly, and in a few hours we will celebrate our second Seder of Passover again. It's a story of going from bondage, from slavery, into freedom. I think it's an important story both literally and figuratively to tell. And I refuse to be trapped by the bondage that someone attempts to put on me by attacking us as they did here last night.
Authorities are now trying to figure out how Balmer was able to scale a 7-foot security fence surrounded by surveillance cameras and enter the governor's mansion. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Still ahead, the battle over transgender athletes in the state of Maine. How one young varsity student is fighting for a level playing field for girls. We'll have that story right after this. The state of Maine is suing the Trump administration for federal funds withheld over transgender athletes in women's sports. One female high school athlete is calling out the unfairness of competing against a biological male. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener brings us an inside look at the controversy.
Maine's small towns, rugged coastlines, and tight-knit communities create a peaceful scene. That quiet is being rocked, however, by the debate over who gets to compete in female sports. It's put Maine in the national spotlight over its state policy, caught between federal pressure and public opinion. Nestled in the state's northern tip, Presque Isle is known for its snowy winters and vast farmland. Now it's also home to one of the state's youngest voices, speaking out on the transgender sports debate.
It shouldn't be my goal to beat a biological male, but it was. And when I didn't, it was super defeating.
For high school senior Cassidy Carlisle, the issue is personal.
I believe that God has created spaces for women to flourish, and we need to protect those spaces.
As a varsity athlete in 3 sports, her first challenge came not on the field, but in a middle school locker room, where she had to change in front of a transgender student. The issue followed her into high school, where the junior faced a transgender athlete in Nordic skiing, an opponent who had previously outperformed several of Cassidy's friends in track.
He placed in like the bottom 15 or 20% when he competed against the males his freshman year in high school. And as he transitioned, he became one of the top female runners.
Males have natural and categorical advantages over females in terms of strength, speed, and power.
Cassidy is certainly not alone, as this transgender debate in women's sports spans from high school to the Olympics, raising critical questions about fairness in athletics.
There are, I think, 3,600 trophies have been lost. 6,000 top-tier finishes have been lost in 11,000 competitions.
So far, more than 24 states have passed laws or regulations restricting transgender girls and women from participating in sports inconsistent with their biological sex.
Now those laws are being challenged in court.
Transgender rights advocates, however, argue the playing field has never been level in women's sports.
I think it's irrelevant because we allow all kinds of competitive advantages within women's sport.
In February, President Trump weighed in by signing an executive order barring transgender athletes from girls' and women's sports. States refusing to comply risk losing federal funding.
The war on women's sports is over.
Days later, the focus moved to Maine when Governor Janet Mills publicly pushed back during a White House event.
Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And
the Trump administration quickly moved to investigate Maine's compliance with Title IX, which prohibits discrimination based on sex. It concluded that the state violated the law by allowing biological males to compete in female sports. The controversy reignited when a transgender athlete from a Maine high school recently won the girls' pole vault event during a Class B state championship. The year before, when competing as a male, the individual tied for 5th in the same event and 10th at the indoor state championship. Adding gasoline to the firestorm, Maine's State House censured Republican Representative Laura Libby for identifying that student in a social media post.
The member will not be able to cast a vote or speak on the floor until the member has come back into compliance.
Libby then sued the House Speaker for violating her right to free speech.
It's mind-boggling that we're here discussing this and that this is not just a foregone conclusion that males are males, females are females, and males do not belong in female sports. It's basic biology.
In 2021, Maine changed its Human Rights Act to prohibit discrimination based on gender identity.
It's not about transgender sports. It's about who makes the laws and who enforces the laws.
They want our girls to be comfortable sharing a locker room with a biological male. They want our kids to have a different perspective than their parents' generation on the value the beauty of gender and sexuality as God created us.
Republican Liz Caruso is sponsoring a bill that would ban transgender athletes from competing in female categories and require Maine schools to designate facilities based on biological sex.
Maine policy has been ignoring Title IX protections, and it has caused chaos and discrimination.
As the debate rages, polls show that 80% of Americans believe transgender athletes should not compete in women's sports.
Full of hope for the state of Maine that our voters, our communities, our parents, our churches are going to engage in a way that they never have before.
As for Cassidy, she's staying in this political competition, from rallying against the governor's transgender policies to attending a White House roundtable, followed by national news appearances.
You feel like you don't have a voice, but that's not true.
While she plans to step away soon from athletics to focus on college, Cassidy hopes her actions will help empower future generations.
Who's to know what opportunities could have come had this individual not been competing against us?
Experts say Maine's legal and legislative developments could shape transgender rights, both in sports and broader policies nationwide. In Portland, Maine, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Coming up, another example of God at work on college campuses, with hundreds coming to salvation at a gospel event in Texas. We'll bring you that story when we come back.
Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
Finally today, another sign of God at work on college campuses. Thousands of students came together at Southern Methodist University in Dallas last week for a Unite Us Gospel event. The ministry reports that by the end of the evening, hundreds said yes to Jesus, with many, wow, it's so cool, many getting baptized, while also adding that God is moving in this generation. The SMU Gospel Gathering was the latest in a series of Unite Us events on various college campuses so far this year. So awesome. Folks, that is it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. Or you can reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, which is formerly known as Twitter. We hope you'll join us again next time. From all of us here, goodbye and God bless.